you're in touch with when you do this consulting and you do this research to prepare and really tailor your presentations. Um, you're dealing with a lot of forward thinking leaders. What do you see that they're doing to navigate the uncertainty? What they're doing to capitalize on these trends that you're bringing forth?
Yeah, I think what they're trying to do across the board in the United States and elsewhere in the world is they're trying to get some context for the chaos that's going on right now and trying to understand that. And what I always tell people is like, it's really important to do that. Why? Because if you don't know where you've been, you certainly can't figure out where you are and you'll never see where you're going. So it's important to understand what happened during COVID. I mean, I know people don't like to go back to that, but it's really important to understand the flow of money that occurred in the United States and still is occurring in the United States and how that's impacting businesses overall, because it's dramatically changed the structure of the economy in the sense that, when we shut things down, and made people stay at home, we changed consumer spending patterns, right? Around the world, like most of the economies are based on consumer spending. In China, it's 35%. In the EU, it's about 52%. In India, it's about 60%. And here in the United States, it's about 70%. And of that 70%, about 70% is spent on services and about 30% is spent on goods. But if you can't go to a bar, if you can't go to a restaurant, if you can't take vacations, the spending on services starts to go down. And if you're forced to stay at home, right, you need a new chair, you need a new desk, Junior needs a new iPad, your spending on goods started to go up. And just a simple shift of 5% blew up the global supply chain. But it also hit home too, to many people outside of China. It's like, oh my gosh, we're really dependent on that country for a lot of manufactured goods that are very important. So people have done a rethink about, well, we need to have maybe China plus one as far as suppliers go. And maybe we need to take advantage of the Chips and Science Act or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Plan or the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a lot of goodies that are in there to encourage manufacturers to move back to the United States. And so there's been that. So people are figuring out like, okay, the world shifted significantly from COVID. Money is still influencing where these opportunities are going. But we've also discovered we lost a lot of workers. Not only did 1 million people die, but a lot of people retired as well. We lost a lot of people out of the workforce. So why does that matter for companies? Because now talent management is so central to what's going on. In other words, how do you get new workers? And then if you do get them, how do you get them up to the speed at which you need them to contribute to your business? So this is to some extent, which is pushing everybody to be more efficient and to be more productive. And what I always like to point out is like, if you've ever worked with a consultant or a PE firm, first thing I tell people is like, my condolences, because they're usually a pain in the butt. But they always talk about crazy things like animals. And I'm not kidding. They talk about alligators. Why do they talk about alligators? Because what they're trying to do, I'll demonstrate, is there's the alligator's mouth. What they're trying to do is increase revenues and drop expenses. Well, how do you do that? Well, to drop expenses, you got to find a way to make your people more productive, don't you? Because then you can have the same amount of workers producing more. Well, what's the best way to do that? Training them. And what's the best way to train them is to figure out how to use artificial intelligence or large language models. And so that's what I spend a lot of time talking to my clients about, is kind of walking them through this progression of how we got to where we're at, why that demand for the increase in teaching and learning to your workers to make them more productive, that's going to be the key to being more productive overall. And as Mark Benioff said, the head of Salesforce, he said, every single one of their clients is trying to utilize AI right now. And that gives you an idea of the breadth of what's happening in that space. So that's the way that the people at the top of the pyramid are looking at things. And that goes down through through every level, really, of an organization. People have not figured it out yet. It's taken it's going to take some time, and there's hurdles to this. If you're highly regulated, some regulators don't like you using the cloud as an example. Other people, it's a question of how do you have that conversation across all those different silos that are within a firm that you can get data from, from sales to production to HR. I mean, everybody needs to be able to create data, catalog it, index it to make it worthwhile to feed into an AI model where it can tell you something interesting about your business. So it broadly speaking, that's what I'm seeing that I think is just really exciting about what's happening here in the United States and in other countries too. The EU is doing similar things.